In order to fight climate change and global warming, several jurisdictions throughout the world have implemented a carbon tax. This is part of their environmental strategies. But why a carbon tax, and what part can this play in the fight to reduce greenhouse gases and global warming? The first thing we need to ask is, what is the purpose of a carbon tax? Most regions that have implemented a carbon tax state that they want to change individuals' behavior. They want people to move away from using products and commodities that release greenhouse gases into the environment and move towards greener alternatives.
This includes moving from higher polluting hydrocarbons such as coal to lower polluting hydrocarbons such as natural gas. Moving from gas combustion to electric vehicles. Increasing the use of public transit and walking for short trips. Reducing the energy required to heat and power homes. Buying more local products to reduce emissions from transportation. Recycling materials to reduce higher emissions associated with production of new products. Growing some of your own vegetables, not overbuying produce so less has to be thrown away, and recycling organic waste. Using water wisely, which includes making sure pipes and faucets don't leak and growing plants that don't require a lot of water. Before we can look at the purpose and intended outcome of imposing carbon taxes, we need to have a broader perspective regarding what causes individuals to change their behavior and why this may not happen even when certain positive options are in place. A few factors have to occur in order for individuals to make the decision to change their behavior. This holds true for changes in behavior that affects the environment. These are: there needs to be education and awareness of environmental issues and the advantages to choosing one behavior over another. Through this education and awareness, individuals need to have the desire to make the effort to change their behavior. Individuals need affordable options to be able to move toward alternatives. If the cost is too high, individuals will not change their behavior. These options need to be both accessible and convenient in order to be effective. Individuals will be far less likely to make a behavioral change if substantial effort is involved. Outside influences. Outside influences from government programs and policies and societal shifts can change the behavior of individuals. It can modify the relationship or weighting between the perceived costs and effort of current behaviors relative to modified behaviors. Government actions usually fall into the categories of incentives or deterrents, whereas changes in societal norms can influence individuals' behavior. With regard to the environment, incentives include rebate programs for purchasing environmentally friendly products, including energy-efficient light bulbs, energy-efficient appliances, higher efficiency furnaces, solar panels, and electric vehicles. It may also include rebates on household upgrades, such as improving insulation or installing more energy-efficient windows or doors. Incentives can also include making recycling items easier, such as providing door-to-door blue bin or organic green bin pickup. Deposits on items such as beverage cans, milk cartons, electronics, and tires encourage individuals to recycle these items to get a refund on the deposit. Annual community recycling events of items not generally recyclable through other programs can also be an incentive to get rid of items such as paint, cans, and electronics, which otherwise could not be easily recycled. Recycling of hazardous materials is often available at fire stations, which provides a better incentive than having to drive all the way to a landfill location. Often electronic stores and hardware stores offer recycling of items such as batteries, chemicals, and tires. Once again, the added convenience of being able to drop off these items for recycling while running other errands provides an incentive that helps keep them out of landfills. Deterrents include additional cost of disposing of too many items at one time. This could take the form of needing to purchase special garbage bags if you need to dispose of more garbage than the limit in a week. This could also take the form of additional charges for disposing of large items at a landfill, including construction materials. Deterrents could also be fines that an individual is charged for disposing of chemicals or other items improperly. Carbon taxes are implemented by governments to make a carbon-emitting item more expensive with the hope of reducing the use of that item. This is a popular deterrent mechanism used by many governments. Carbon taxes can be applied to various hydrocarbon-containing commodities, such as coal, gasoline, diesel, heating oil, propane, natural gas. Societal changes that lead to the adoption of greener alternatives include availability of more recycling options and seeing that others are using these options. An example is noticing everyone put out recycling bins in your neighborhood. Recently, this includes the ability to recycle organics in many jurisdictions. Adoption of electric vehicles. The adoption can be facilitated through media, indicating that purchasing a certain vehicle, such as a Tesla, holds social status. Also, the increasing availability of charging stations makes owning an electric vehicle more appealing to some people than it was in the past. The cost of transition. Any major change can be expensive. Often, there is an increased price tag of greener alternatives. This is readily apparent in the upfront cost of implementing some greener options. For example, updating a building to current standards is often very expensive. Wiring and plumbing may no longer meet current codes or is simply worn out. Replacing wiring and pipes may mean taking apart walls in order to get access for the replacement. Updating a kitchen can be very expensive if cabinets or counters need to be replaced. If all appliances are upgraded to new energy-efficient models, this can greatly contribute to the cost of the refurbishment. Updating insulation or windows in a building can be very expensive, even with the presence of a rebate. Installing more efficient furnaces or heat pumps can be expensive, especially if you are replacing a furnace and adding a heat pump at the same time. Installing solar panels or updating wiring to accommodate fast charging options for electric cars have an expensive upfront cost. Purchasing a comparable electric vehicle is often far more expensive than a traditional combustion engine vehicle. Also, the insurance for this vehicle will usually be more expensive. Recent numbers also show that maintenance or repairs of electric vehicles is usually about 80% more expensive than combustion engine vehicles. This is largely a result of fewer options for the maintenance. Cities and regions will also need to upgrade their electrical grid infrastructure to handle the additional demand from using more electricity and less hydrocarbon sources. Additional energy storage will also likely need to be added to most systems. Almost all of this cost needs to be passed on to consumers, making the cost of living more expensive. Carbon taxes over time. The initial gains achieved by a carbon tax doesn't guarantee it will continue to be as successful after it has been implemented for a number of years. Early years. During the first few years of implementation of a carbon tax, there will be a number of ways to move to greener options for a relatively low cost. This is because there will be several items, such as energy-efficient light bulbs, that can be purchased at a low cost. The cost of an additional few cents per liter of gasoline will not amount to a substantial increase in yearly costs, especially when prices vary quite a bit due to market demand. Usually, when carbon taxes are introduced, there will initially be a number of rebate programs in place that assist home and business owners in reducing costs of upgrades. In addition, there will be emphasis on green alternatives accompanying carbon taxes in the news media during early days of implementation. Many individuals will take advantage of rebates in order to do upgrades and renovations to their home that have been on their to-do list for a while. Initially, many small and large appliances that are more energy efficient will be available due to this initial push towards energy reduction. Later years. However, once a carbon tax has been implemented for several years, there will be a number of factors that diminish its effectiveness. These include environmental or green movement fatigue. When people have been hearing the same messages over many years, the impact of the messages will not resonate as much as they initially did. Many of the easy-to-do, cost-effective measures that an individual or household can carry out will have already been accomplished during the first few years of the green transition. For example, if a household improves their home insulation, they will only do that once. Installation of programmable thermostats will also be a one-time change. the energy efficiency gains will continue to be maintained. However, there will not be any further gains from these changes. Of course, the individual will still need the desire to implement these changes. Individuals that don't have the desire to move to greener alternatives will not be influenced by increasing carbon taxes. Other methods of transition, such as being able to recycle more types of items and only being able to buy energy-efficient appliances, will represent an increasing percentage of the reduction in emissions. This is because, with or without a carbon tax, the consumer no longer has a choice of buying less efficient appliances, and additional emissions reductions can be realized through various recycling options. Awareness of greener alternatives will be more prevalent throughout society. Decreasing the amount of carbon tax influences behavior. In other words, moving towards greener behavior is more likely with or without a carbon tax. Also, the cost of continuous increases of a carbon tax to the consumer over time will not lead to significant changes in behavior towards greener alternatives. This is because most of the alternatives that individuals have not already implemented are too costly or not accessible and convenient. This is especially true in many regions around the world, such as Canada, where cost of living increases have soared in the last few years. The effect of carbon taxes on the implementation of carbon taxes decreases an individual's disposable income, even if carbon tax rebates are part of the program. Since a carbon tax increases the cost of many products and services used in day-to-day life, it also increases the overall cost of living for most people. In addition to direct costs, such as higher gasoline and natural gas prices due to the carbon tax, there are also a number of indirect costs. These include rising prices for goods and services due to increased production costs, transportation cost increases affecting everything from commuting to food delivery, administration costs, including additional accounting and documentation requirements. Canada's federal carbon tax costs around $80 million per year to administer at the federal level alone. Disproportionate impact on rural communities dependent on fossil fuel industries. Increased costs for regions with limited access to renewable energy alternatives. Economic slowdown in areas heavily dependent on carbon-intensive industries when production costs increase significantly. Decreases in business competitiveness, including companies in high-emission industries may lose market share to competitors in regions without carbon taxes. Increased operational costs can lead to reduced investment in research and development. Some businesses may relocate to jurisdictions with lower environmental regulations. We see this when businesses relocate some or all of their operations from Canada to the United States, which currently does not have a carbon tax. Higher unemployment in areas that are more affected by the decreased ability to compete, and loss of jobs to regions that don't have the impact of a carbon tax. Decrease in investment in areas with a carbon tax due to a less favorable business environment. This includes a decrease in investment in research and development towards greener alternatives, which is largely driven by the private sector. A high percentage of this investment is in the oil and gas industry. Decrease in taxes collected by governments as a result of fewer jobs in a number of industries and occupations. This is due to relocation of work and production to other countries with a more favorable tax and operational cost environment. Once again, this will affect the amount of money available to invest in green programs and research and development. This time at the publicly funded level.
Although a carbon tax, even several years after implementation, can still deter some on the use of greenhouse gas generating products and commodities, there are many other mechanisms that result in behavioral changes to green alternatives. Most of these other avenues do not have the disadvantage of significant indirect costs of a carbon tax. This is especially true in regions where a carbon tax and other green initiatives have already resulted in many of the behavioral changes that most people can afford. If individuals cannot see a significant benefit to themselves or society, they are very unlikely to change their behavior. In order for most future gains to be realized, we will need advancements in technology, which can only come from research and development and commercialization of green alternatives. During the transition to greener energy alternatives, we also need to continue reducing the emissions footprint of each unit of energy sourced from hydrocarbon commodities. Since every year the countries of the world increase their demand for energy, we will still be dependent on hydrocarbon energy sources for many years to come. This is true even with a increasing number of green energy alternatives becoming available. Energy storage both on-grid and in batteries will be a key component of the transition. In addition, we will need to continue to improve and find better ways of implementation of solar, wind, geothermal, and nuclear options.